call is with a one life long timer, a one life regular, someone who has grown up and been a part of the One Life family, really pretty much since the beginning, and who has essentially gone through the journey. You know, a lot of people find our community and are looking for their path, or have realized that what they've been doing thus far is not working for them, and they are looking for something new. And so now they're open to it. And what I love about Rhonda is she got into the community, she had an awakening, and then she went out and found resources and did the work and did the hard work and did more hard work and continued to evolve and continued to just what Tim would call, doing the shoulds so she could have the goods. And she just published a book last year, which was if you went to our conference, you actually got a book. And she's launched her own community and has really just found herself. And what's really interesting is those of you guys who joined the call before, she talked about the fitting, timing of this whole thing. And, she'll probably take you through her story and maybe even, kind of her recent journey, and talk about why self-care and really loving yourself is so important right now. Because I think on social media, it's so easy to see what's going on. And right now there's obviously a lot of negativity, but even before that, there was so much perfection, or so much seeming perfection, that you end up comparing yourself or not wanting to deal with the real stuff. And so today we're going to talk about some of that, and we're going to talk about emotions and all of the good fun stuff that everybody loves to dig into. So without further ado, I want to throw it over to Rhonda and thank you, and just for spending some time with us. We always appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always good to be home. This is like the beginning. Tim rode and I went for a fateful walk one day out on the river, and he asked me what I wanted to do with my life, and I didn't have a clue. And it's been 7 years, and I have 2 companies. I run retreats, and I have a medicine school and a new relationship. And I'm very much in the practice of learning self-care through all of these pieces. And I really want to talk about that today, of us trying to have it all. And everybody's in this place where we can have it all. And it's something that really incrementally needs to happen. You have to have foundations in place and self-care in place. And you have to understand, like, it's an evolution of practice. And even in my own life, when something's deeply out of alignment, I'm heavily shown. And I always want to be in integrity in this call. And my self-care is like, I'm really not battling it, but I'm learning how to handle this new place. So I noticed when we got on the call today that I'm blinking more. And this is a sign that my body's trying to release anxiety. And when we can start to pay attention to the signs of our body, we can really listen to what we need for self-care. Everybody's in this place where the body needs to be hacked. And I don't agree. It's like taking a hatchet and trying to force it into something. The body is the most amazing technology we will ever experience on the planet. And when we learn to listen to it and listen to its messages in more subtle ways, we can really guide ourselves. But for most of us, like myself included, sometimes I really needed to yell at me. And over Memorial Day weekend has been really out of alignment and really not in self-care and very unrested. And I broke my arm and have had 2 surgeries. So it was a big way to teach me that I need to slow down and I need to listen, and like some things have to move. So, when we can really get in the practice of listening and not forcing, we can live a much better life.
Rhonda, one thing that I think is relevant to the conversation is your background and your study, and you can go into however much you'd like, but you, in your own sense, have gone off. Some people go to India and travel for years and do, they come back this changed or this, awakened person. You went on your own kind of journey and experience over the last several years. Can you share whatever you'd like about that? And then kind of dive into, you talked a little bit about what's happened recently. It's just some of the tools and, practices that have been integral to that. And then we can kind of talk about, some of the emotional stuff. But I think your background and your training is really relevant, because I'm looking at our guests here. There's people on the call, there's a lot of new people. And so they might not know some of the things that you're involved in.
So I went into a coaching certification program through Tim's amazing guidance and support. Super annoying for me finally deciding what I was going to do. And then I really got into the shadow work of who we are and our deep emotional feelings and body. And although I think it's really important to always know where we're headed, if we can't sit with who we are in the present moment, then we bypass the learning. In every single moment of our lives, there's emotion and feeling that has information in it for us. And if we're constantly just trying to visualize ourselves into this other state, we miss it. So that was really the primary base of my work, is being able to live with Rhonda right now in this moment to motivate me to do something. And that was a big obstacle for me. So I began working with plant medicines. And I went to Peru and I trained under some amazing shamans, and I lived in the jungle for 30 days and had no running water, and slept with termites and creepy crawlies and huge snakes, and had to bathe in the river, and really got to know myself. And I think the most important part about what's happening now in our time is that a lot of us were living maybe really extra large or above our means, stretching to reach that next place. And it's really important to reach, but one of the fundamental pieces that Tim has always said is like, you have to like lead with revenue. You have to start smart. And even in his own life, he in no way lives small, but he lives very much in a way that's sustainable. And I've always honored that in his success. So I've tried to model myself a little bit. And, there's times we really have to reach and stretch, but we have to do it incrementally. And then when I came back, I really understood the power of working with shamans and different types of medicine. So I started running retreats into that. And I just created a school teaching people how to do sacred shamanic work. And that part's been really fascinating. We have another company called The Expanded Human, which is like the birth of a dream. And it's really trying to take people out of the idea that I think there's a point in our time in the last 5 to 10 years where, the belief if we're not growing, we're dying was important, because it taught us we really needed to learn how to be more self-reliant and learn education and grab those pieces. But I feel like right now where we're at is this pivotal time where we need to learn and have self-actualization. If we're constantly having to feed ourselves information all the time, then essentially we're not learning or listening to what's coming out of us. We're just feeding ourselves, and then we don't know what to do when stuff gets tough or when times get hard, and then we kind of feel desperate. So my work is about learning how to listen, learning how to be self-reliant, which was the work of my life, and really trusting in the process of that part, rather than that quick fix of feeding and needing. And we have a lot of people, amazing people in our communities, that I watch them read 25 or 50 books in a year. And I understand they're trying to gobble up as much as they can, but I'm a firm believer, pick 3 books in a year or 2 books in a year, and embody that book, learn that book, live that book. Don't just have information that's tapped into yourself about it. Like, it's time for us to be in a different place. So that's the fundamental parts of our company is, it's time to be in self-actualization. It's time to take what we've learned and then go do something with it. Tim is a great example. He had success in real estate, and then he had this big calling to create something to help people learn how to have tools that were different and to do it in a different way. And that's really what the world needs now, because we're in very confusing times, for sure. And I watched a lot of people go through depression and have anxiety and be in fear, and in a world where I think we were about having it all, maybe we need to ask, what do we really need?
Yeah.
What do we really need?
Rhonda, we started these Monday calls actually were birthed out of, when the pandemic started, we started these Monday calls, and as a response, in a way to, give value to our community and bring people together. And what's interesting is how the conversations have changed. But one thing that stayed really consistent is the need for self-care. And the unfortunate statistics come out in terms of domestic violence and suicide and depression and all of these things. And what's interesting is we see a lot of the people who are very skilled dealing with these things and having to overcome. And so I can imagine what someone who isn't involved in personal or spiritual growth, or who doesn't have those tools. So I'd love to just, I'm kind of filibustering here to give some time if anybody wants to drop a question in or wants to kind of share with Rhonda where they're at. But Rhonda, can you speak to the shift that's maybe not happened, but maybe that people are waking up to, or the shift that is needed in terms of, what's being exposed with people being forced to, be in lockdown or quarantine, or, a lot of the injustices that are seeming, coming to light now. How do you see that playing with self-care? And for those of you guys who have questions, if you guys want to raise your hand or throw them down in the chat, I'd love to open it up for questions for Rhonda after this.
Due to the work I've been doing shamanically, like for some time now, I knew that something was coming, but I didn't really know what it was. And even when the time came, and as much as I knew, I really found I still wasn't prepared. I have a teacher who always says, be kind, be compassionate, and grow a garden. And through all of my trauma, that was really one of the best pieces of advice I could have, because I didn't have a garden growing, and I didn't even know how to grow a garden really. So learning those pieces of how to be more self-reliant and self-sufficient. So as this time hits and people are starting to understand a little bit more about what kind of world we're really living in, because I think a lot of us were kind of living in this dream state, there's a lot of fear and emotions and feelings that come up. And if you don't know how to sit with them and listen to them, it can be very scary. And, people have a lot of ideas about what fear is. And I have a really different idea. When fear is present in my life, it's my best friend. It's there to say, hey, there's something you need to look at, and something you need to learn, or something you need to know, or something you need to accept, or something you need to change. And I have 4 steps we're going to go over, and we're going to really go over embodiment because it's important, but we have to let ourselves learn to sit in that feeling rather than try and just like soothe it out. Or, I see a lot of people drinking a lot more, or eating a lot more, or having intimacy a lot more to try and deal with these emotions. And if we just give ourselves like 5 to 15 minutes, and sometimes it takes longer, to like go lay down on your bed or to sit in a chair and just kind of lean back and completely relax your body. And if you just let the feeling move through you, it will literally move through you. And right now around me and you are billions and billions of experiences. And we all have had such tunnel vision on like this idea of a dream that we sometimes miss out on the experiences that are really meant for us. And sometimes the only way they can come in is if they come in through anger, or they come in through fear. And it doesn't have to just be an emotion that's hard to feel. And I don't really look at emotions as positive and negative. I think they're all emotions and they're all needed. But when we can allow something to be present and be open and flexible to how it's going to come through, and we allow the feeling to move through us, then it moves through us and it moves on. And that intensity that we sometimes need to get away from, it kind of can move through. And then in that feeling or that intensity, information's kind of dropped off in our bodies cellularly, and then it moves on to someone else to give them information. So that's really learning how to be embodied in your feelings. And 2 summers ago, I had a lot of things out of alignment. My businesses weren't working. Everything was a big struggle. I felt like there were some relationships that really didn't understand. And I am an entrepreneur that has depression. And I happily admit that because it's who I am. And I realized that when I have depression, I'm literally growing into my higher self. Like there's a big transition happening. There's something big in my life, and I need to just kind of let myself lay down or rest or walk in the woods or whatever it is I need so that I can move into that state. Well, I moved into this state of anger for like 3 months, entire like seething, horrible anger. And even my father said, like, you're so hard to be around right now. And there was nothing I could do. And it's called the ring of fire. And it's this time of transition where you have to finally get aligned and really be in boundary and strong with how you feel. And from that anger was the beginning of how I birthed my book. So coming into that. And then as I wrote the book, I had another time where I went into really big depression, and like I was in bed for a couple of weeks. And, I created a company that literally is a culture that I can do that. I said, this is who I am, this is how I am, and this is how we grow and do big things. And then I birthed the book, and then what was much better. And then I was in my thriving state again. So we have to really accept our feelings and emotions right now. And rather than judge them or think that they're negative or bad, they're present to tell you something. And when we can be embodied in it and then have a tool or multiple tools to sit with it, like we can get through anything. And we might not do it, I mean, I didn't handle this all very gracefully. I really thought this was going to be better going into something. I didn't plan on it being a pandemic, but I could say like, okay, Rhonda, like, what do you need right now? And when I get angry at my partner, or like I'm whatever, I'm short, like I'm not giving myself something I need. And that's really the key point, is like learning to like listen to that part. And I usually start with, am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Is it something? And that's really getting strong with our boundaries. Tim Rowe takes a nap every day. I don't know if you tell people that, Tim, but and it's just part of his thing. And when I saw that Tim was a napper, and I was like, Tim can do the things he does, and he takes a nap every day, I got to build that into my life. So, I hear people that chug water. I got to get my water in today, and they just chug it and chug it, and chug it. Like if you dumped water on a plant like that, just dumped it on, like all the dirt would come out, the roots would be exposed. You're not hydrating and watering the plant. So how we water ourselves, how we feed ourselves, how do you place food in your mouth, how do you sip water during the day, these are all really big self-care things. And I do want to say this, self-care isn't just about being tender and getting massages and taking bubble baths and drinking good water. Sometimes self-care is doing what's hard. It's doing the hard thing. It's facing yourself. It's pushing through. It's taking that business and just pushing it in. It's self-care is lots of things, but it's allowing yourself to be present with your true self and then moving through it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is not so much prevalent in our community, because we really stress the core four, is that whole hustle mentality, or the work 24/7. And I think Tim sets a good example. So let's get into it. You've got some keys here, and I'm excited. So the first one was embody, and can you give some context as to what or when you would use these, or kind of what these keys are all about?
Embodiment is actually number 3. So let's start with time and space. So we have to create time and space to listen to ourselves. And I know that sounds like cheesy. And, I'm sure there's people in here that are in the Miracle Morning community, which I think is an amazing place to start. But like, there's a point when like your morning routine needs to become what you need. I play the ukulele in the morning. I'll do some tarot. I'll journal, I'll sit, whatever the process is. So we have to understand the pieces. Some people, a lot of my community drums in the morning just to kind of get the rhythm going and get the body moving. So you have to create time and space for you to have time and space, whether that's getting a weekly or monthly massage and just kind of building into your life. And, when I build out my calendar, our community has an amazing 2020 planner guide for the community. It was huge. And like the very first thing you do in your week is you build out your personal time. Very first thing, like you have to have time and space to be that person. And we believe in this part so much that we have a self-care coach in all of our programs that literally comes in to remind our people that you have to have these parts going as you grow your business. So the second piece is receptivity. Like you have to be receptive to having it look different and changing. You have to understand that what worked, what got you here won't get you there. So that whole like, we got to be forceful and you got to be a badass all the time and you got to be like this, like that's what got us to the point, and now it's different. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired. And all the things that I created for myself, all the yeses I gave and all the obligations, I am now paying the consequences and maintenance of that. And then my self-care changes, my anxiety rises, my body's stressed, I eat more, all of the things that we do. So that the body is like, the body keeps the score, which is a great book, by the way. The body keeps the score. It will tell you like when it's not working. So if we can listen, so we have to be receptive to it changing. We also have to be receptive to letting things go. The things that, we really thought were like the thing. And if it's just not working, nature's working really hard right now to show us what's not working. And I think if anything from COVID, I'm in such great appreciation. It showed me all the places I was out of alignment, financially, emotionally, physically, home-wise, all of the things that showed me that. And then the third piece is embodiment. And embodiment is a term that's really thrown away out there. It's kind of like mindfulness, like everyone just kind of throws it around. And I don't really think people know what it means. So if you guys just want to take a second, and if you would just close your eyes, go ahead and exhale out your breath. Go ahead and inhale in a big breath. And as you exhale it out, make some noise. Go ahead and take in another inhale. And this time when you exhale, let all the air out of your body. So I don't want you to visualize, but I want you to drop into your heart right now. Don't visualize it, feel it. Drop into your heart and see what it feels like inside your heart. And if it were to have a color, what color would it be? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel light? And if there were to have some type of substance to it, would it be a gas? Is it a solid? Is it a liquid? Just take a moment to kind of be with that feeling. And some of you may not feel the feeling yet. It takes time to remember how to be back in our bodies and to let ourselves feel things. And go ahead and just blow it up with beautiful purple light. See how that feels inside your chest. You can go ahead and exhale. Take in one more breath and fill your body with air. And then exhale it out and open your eyes. So I have a really good friend who, it took me 2 years to feel what was inside my body. So it's a practice, but the book Radical Wholeness by Philip Shepherd is a game changer. It teaches us that like the voice is a sense. And when we think before we speak, we're filtering the cycle. But if we actually have a moment where we say to our partners or a friend, I'm just going to speak to see what I feel, it's a game changer because the voice tells us things that sometimes we don't know about our feeling body. So embodiment is a lifestyle. It's a very deep practice that we do, but embodying our emotions, being with our anger, not judging it, how we talk to ourselves when we're in those emotions, how when we feel when we look in the mirror and we don't really like our bodies, or we're just not feeling good about ourselves, or maybe we're feeling really good about ourselves, right? It can be either. So this practice is Radical Wholeness by Philip Shepherd. Yeah. And Philip has workshops and amazing things. He's been a teacher of mine for years. But this is really the secret. We were talking about, I woke up this morning with really just deep anxiety, and I had to listen. I had to sit there and listen to it and like listen to all the things it was trying to tell me. And sometimes I don't like the timing of when it tries to tell me, but let's talk a little bit about anxiety for a second, and then we'll go to the fourth step, which is pretty much the most important one. Anxiety isn't always just from an external source. So there's a lot of people out there that teach us like, you just have to change your mind. And there are times when that's true about things, when we have anxiety about things. And, sometimes we have anxiety because we're moving into a new state. And Neil Godfrey, who's been amazing in this community, I was getting ready to go on stage and speak in front of a couple hundred people at One Life, and I had really bad anxiety. And she's like, you got to use it as a battery right now to get up on stage. And as brutal as it was for me, that's what I did. But there are people that have systems that don't work right. They're off balance. And I'm one of those people. And we have, and I'm just going to do this on a really high level, sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. And when our parasympathetic nervous system doesn't work properly, some of us have debilitating anxiety. It's because we create too much norepinephrine and too much cortisol in the body. And we have a physical response that's super intense inside. And there's herbs and there's lots of stuff you can do to try and help you. So wherever you are in it, just know that anxiety is a very real thing for people. It's not just something that like they're afraid or they're scared. It can actually be a physical, for me, it's almost like an ailment. It's been my biggest ailment. So learning a little bit about how people are and having compassion for people. Just because someone feels something and telling them, you can't bypass their feelings, rather than saying, you just got to do it anyway. Like sometimes those things, sometimes you just have to say, wow, that must be so hard. And that's really hearing and seeing people. So understanding right now, the thing that's needed on the planet the most is compassion. Even if we don't agree with other people, people's experiences are very real. whether in fear about money or they're not sure what to do about their things. I have clients right now that are potentially going into bankruptcy. Like a lot of people are going through really heavy stuff. So having compassion, and it's not ours to hold, and it's certainly not ours to fix. A good friend posted online, we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. And that's really true. Like, so understanding that piece. And then the fourth and final step, which is the most important step, is boundaries. You have to know your boundaries. You have to be able to implement them. And for some of you, this will be really easy. And just because you know your truth and this is how you feel, it doesn't mean we get to walk around to be a big jerk. It means we have to learn how to share our boundaries with kindness and compassion. But for some of you, if you're like me, which I had more of a codependent nature, it was hard for me to enforce boundaries because I was afraid I was going to hurt people's feelings, or I was afraid that basically of how I was going to feel afterward of like enforcing myself. So boundaries is also a really big practice. And there's lots of great books out there on boundaries if you need help. And one amazing tool is creating a boundary statement for yourself. And I know when I came home from my hellish mess, my family was really like in that, just do it, and assertive. And I am like this super sensitive person, and I've had to get stronger, which has been great. But and I apologize for the chainsaw of all the days the neighbors cutting trees. It's today, so real life. But if you create a boundary statement for yourself and you say it the same thing every time, when people react to us, so like I would say to my dad, let's say, gosh, that makes me feel too much. I don't want to hear what you have to say. He's like, you need to get stronger. And that's how his brain knew how to react to my feelings, right? So I would say, I appreciate that you feel this way, but I'm no longer available for this conversation. And that was my boundary statement. And you can create any boundary statement you want. And I said this to my family for 3.5 years, and Tim knows my family. They're not a very soft family sometimes. And finally, when they would come at me that way, they would see they couldn't get the same response, and their brain didn't respond the same way. And it literally rewired that relationship. So then they stopped. So that was me placing a strong boundary and having a statement. And you can just simply say, I appreciate that you feel this way. I love you. And that's all you have to say. It doesn't even have to be, it can be soft, but it always needs to be the same. So I really recommend sitting with yourself and understanding like what relationships or what needs you have in your life that aren't happening, and what's a gentle, kind, and compassionate thing you can say that is fierce enough to offer that flick to somebody for them to stop. So another piece with boundaries is, I don't know if you guys know Aaron Velke, but he's part of this community. He's an incredible human, and his morning routine is untouchable. You can't get him on the phone. He will never change it. He is so fierce with his morning routine and the things he does for himself, because that's how he supports himself as an entrepreneur. So getting really strong about not available during this time, no matter what. I mean, if something's on fire, maybe, but other than that, you're not. And getting really strong in those pieces. And if you follow these 4 steps, they're super simple. The embodiment parts and education in itself, but some of you just allow yourself to feel, and that's being embodied right there. So these are really the steps for everything, and this is how you create a foundation for every new part of your life: new relationship, new business, new job, a child, any of those things. If you're strong in this piece, then you can grow in that part. But if you try and do it all and have it all and this piece isn't there, it's going to be a mess.
This is real gold. And guys, I'd love for you, if you haven't been taking notes, I'd love for you to take a quick minute to just jot down which one seems most relevant to you. Because in a moment, we don't do this often, but I thought today would be fitting for us to do and go into some breakout rooms and just talk a little bit, because I think this is such a real, my whole life, I always thought that I never dealt with anxiety. And in the last couple of years, I'm realizing like, oh crap, I've been dealing with this my whole life. I haven't been realizing it, or I was suppressing it and doing some, different stuff. And so I think it's a conversation that everybody can have. And,
Can I add something?
Sure. Of course.
A lot of times we paint a lens on an emotion, like, oh, I'm in fear. I have to stop. I'm instantly paralyzed. And when you become embodied and you start to ask yourself, what is it that I'm actually feeling? Well, I'm feeling maybe an agitation in my nervous system. I'm feeling maybe my heart's beating a little bit. Maybe I'm sweating a little bit. And you have to ask yourself, is that really fear? Or have you put that lens on that emotion? Because sometimes it's just emotion of us growing. And we instantly paint the idea that it has to be that, or, anger. Everyone looks at anger as such a bad thing. I love anger. I have to be honest, anger is one of my greatest emotions because it really lets me know when I'm not taking care of myself, right? And that I'm allowing things I shouldn't be allowing. So before I looked at it like this negative thing, and I would have really bad self-talk, and I was like, oh, okay, hey friend, hey anger, you're such a good friend. Thanks for showing up and like giving me that message that I need to look at a situation and kind of not changing my mind necessarily, but sometimes just changing the lens in which I see something.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys have not been on one of the Zoom breakouts, don't worry. Usually things take care of them themselves, and one lifers are always very helpful and kind. And so what I'd encourage you to do is just to go around. There'll probably be 3 or 4 people in the room. Go around and just share, for a minute or two, which is most relevant for you. Or if not, you might see this in a relationship. Or see the need in a relationship that you have. But we'll take a few minutes and then we'll come back and we can kind of share. We'll have some questions for Rhonda at that point. But if it does not send you guys there automatically, I will try and fix it. Those of you guys who are catching us on the Facebook, on the Book of Faces, I'd encourage you guys to join us, www.onelifefullylived.org/join. And you guys can get in on the call. And that is the link to join all of our Monday calls. Coming up for a new name for them. We'll be finding a new name for our Monday calls. But every Monday, we have them at 9 a.m. Pacific and 12 p.m. Eastern. And you can join them with some incredible people. And I would encourage you guys that if you guys are catching this on the replay, either on the Facebook, or you can catch all of these replays in the One Life Mighty Networks. You guys can just go to onelifefullylived.org/network, and it will take you right there. So if you guys are still here, I'd love to know what you guys are learning so far. Over the first 30 minutes of this conversation with Rhonda, we've gone into some really great stuff. Just to recap, those of you guys who are catching this live on Facebook, one of the first things she talked about was time and space, and giving yourself that time and space to have self-care. We talked about receptivity, the ability to be open to it, embodying it, and creating boundaries. And so I'd love to know which one is most relevant to you guys out there as well. Coming up in the One Life community, if you guys are not aware, the One Life Fully Lived just released the One Life Roadmap Journal Adult Edition, and it's our second journal out. And if you ever wanted to get on the track to living your One Life Fully Lived, or you wanted to be able to help someone one life themselves, it's a great tool to be able to do that. It's available on Amazon right now, and you can go to onelifefullylived.org/Amazon and get your copy. And it walks you through all the parts of living your one life fully lived. It helps you set and create your vision. It helps you to create a financial plan. It helps you to identify the important relationships in your life, and also figure out how you can improve your overall wellness, improve your health. And so those are really things that we know are the keys to living a fulfilled life. And so once again, that's onelifefullylived.org/Amazon. It's over 120 pages or so. There's dozens of exercises and stuff that anybody who is either graduated from high school or college and is just getting out into the real world, or it's also great for people who are at a kind of a transition in their life. Maybe they're at a career transition, or they're starting to look for what that next step is, or maybe they're just unhappy with where they're at in their life. It's a book that's great for them. And then we also have the student edition. So there is a One Life Fully Lived Roadmap Journal Student Edition, which gives the same information but tailors it and relates it, makes it relatable to someone who's still in school. So whether they're in middle school or high school, it's a great tool for them as well. All right, so we're gonna bring people back in about 60 seconds or so, and just hear some insights, hear some thoughts and some responses of what happened in the conversations. So if you guys are not joining us live, I'd encourage you to come in and hop on our live calls. They are really a unique experience. They started out as what we call a community call and an opportunity for everybody to just get together and hang out. And it really is that that regular group of people that you can hang out with, who are going to lift you up and inspire you. I remember Tim referring to it as the temple in the book The Richest Man in Babylon. There's I think it's called the Temple of Learning, or the Temple of Wisdom, something like that, where everybody got together. The people who were extremely wealthy were sitting down next to peasants, and people of all classes and colors and races were getting together learning, and that's what we tried to model these calls after. So looks like some people are back. It looks like everyone's back. Welcome back. Hopefully everybody made it, and hopefully that you guys got some value out of that. I'd love to just open it up for anybody to share something that came up, or a theme, a question, if they want to honor somebody in their group, or if they want to throw something up to Rhonda. I'd love to just open it up to any of the participants or guests here on the call. Does anyone want to unmute themselves and go first? Joe? Yeah.
Hi, Rhonda. Thanks
Hi.
so much for being here. Ellen and I were on with Don Mount, but Don, we couldn't see him or hear him, so we apologize. We wanted to include him, but it didn't work. Ellen and I were both saying we could listen to you all day and really appreciate what you're offering here. And I know you probably you may have done this at the beginning and I missed it. I was having some connection problems, but how does one get in touch with you, or tell us what you do on a daily basis to help people? Because this is very helpful.
So I'm a coach. So I help people. I typically help people that have kind of hit a point in their life where it has to change. That's usually it, is like something as big, like we haven't been listening to those whispers and like it's roaring at us right now. So I go through the shadow work of like why, and I call it schmutz, but we all have schmutz in our way of our purpose. And like, that's why we're not quite like living our dharma. And there's a big difference between purpose and dharma. Purpose is what kind of ignites us to get off our booties to like want to live a different life. But dharma isn't really a choice. Dharma is that thing. It's why you're here on earth. It's the universe, spirit, nature, whatever you believe, is literally going to bring something through you because you're the one to bring it through. So we have to learn how to remove the schmutz and sit with our stuff so that can come through. So that's a little bit of the work I do. I work with a lot of plant medicines to help people do that too. And then we have in our other company, we have people that want to be coaches, who have really been trying, but it's just not quite working. We have an Ignite coaching program. It actually started today. And that's a great program. And then at the end of summer, we're launching the Birth of My Soul, which is called the Inner Circle. And it's a mastermind to really, it's like, if any of you are familiar with Maslow's triangle of hierarchy, we get to this point where we're all living in esteem. We're all looking for esteem or growth or this place, and we're the next step up of self-actualization. And the only way to get there is to invert the triangle and go down into the shadow and realize like what's keeping us from it, like the parts of ourselves we haven't looked. So that mastermind will be starting at the end of summer. So yeah, you can reach out to me through Facebook. That's probably the best way, and you can friend me on my page, Rhonda Smith. I think if you look it up, Rhonda Smith 326, I'm over there.
I'll drop her URL in the
okay, perfect,
in the chat there, Joe. And she's in the One Life community, and she's tagged on all the stuff. So
yeah,
you can follow her breadcrumbs there. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Joe. Was there anybody else who wanted to chime in and share something that came up in their breakout, or a question that they had for Rhonda. Tim, I saw you had a question there.
Doggone it. Yeah.
There
Two
you
things. Number one, I was in a room with Matt and Robert, and I don't know, Matt couldn't or didn't unlock, so we didn't get to hear from him. But Robert had some very astute observations. It was interesting. I asked him, are you like Rhonda and I, where you go up and down and you have a steady mate who doesn't have as much anxieties? Or are you kind of slow and steady? And he said, the only ones who can trigger me are my kids. My wife can't, my business can't. Hector.
I know that. Yeah. Oh, I know that.
Yeah. And Sterling's laughing. What's funny is I'm so removed from all of this. My kids are way grown. It's like, you don't remember how much that is. And I was out camping with some young families this weekend with their young kids, and it was just fascinating to watch all the interplay and what's okay and what they'll tolerate because they don't want to start stuff. But, fascinating just to see the whole thing. So that was great to
Well, it's interesting, Rhonda, to talk about, self-care amongst kids, because one of the things that came up in my head, and I tried to, say that it was just an excuse, but the excuse that we give is kids. And it's like, I've got 2 under 2. And since then, our self-care, like if we look at the chart of babies and the chart on self-care, there's a direct, inverse proportion of it. And so I don't know if you can speak to self-care amongst families, or for us it's just been lots of grace, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I don't have any children of my own, so I have such a deep respect for how you bring a baby into the world and manage that piece. I think that it really does take an entire community to raise a child, so having that support and not being afraid to ask for help, especially because we see a lot of women that get really bad depression and such after, because we have this innate desire often to have children, but we have really no idea what that means, and we have not properly offered the world education on what that's like. And I just started dating somebody and moved in, and he has a 7-year-old daughter, so that was one of the practices that I didn't get prepared for. And the understanding of the need and the irritation, and like learning how to teach her how to do things, so I didn't necessarily have to do it for her. So it's been a big growth, but you have to sit down and look at your need, because if you're constantly just giving, I have a friend who lives in Reno, and she has a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they are completely self-sufficient. They cook for themselves, they clean for themselves, they do everything for themselves. And she taught them that. And she's like, I don't have to do that. And I walk in their house and like they're making breakfast and like they're doing all the things. And it's not like an Eggo in the toaster. They're actually like cooking for themselves. So we also have to learn, one of the 2 greatest things I think you can teach a child is, first of all, how to self-soothe. So teaching them how to offer soothing for themselves, because that was like my biggest obstacles. I didn't know how. My mom just did it for me my whole life. So teaching them, and you can use essential oils. So you can have a couple essential oils for them. And as they begin to grow, have them go choose an oil for themselves to offer soothing when they're emotional or upset. And I have a friend who works for a big oil company, and her children have been doing this since they were like 2 or 3. So that's one way. But self-reliance is the key. Like that's a big part for kids. And if you teach them, there's no greater thing you can teach a kid than that you know how to love and take care of yourself, and that you can put those pieces first. So I think that's really it. But I'm very new at this, so I'm probably the last person to ask, because I don't want to say I'm flailing, but I can definitely be doing better.
There's a shock period. There's a shock period. I want to throw. Go ahead, Tim.
I just like to touch on Rhonda on just juggling it all. Like you've got something new going, you've got what this is going, and many of us can relate to this, and we're just trying to maintain what we have, start new stuff, And then there's all the incoming from the world. You know what I mean? Just and I'm trying to figure out what my exact question is. How do we best handle everything we do and stay sane and not overwhelm ourselves? I look up, and I'm sure you do too, and go, WTF have I done? And then I have people going, hey, Tim, start this, do this, do this. And, then get away for 3 or 4 days, turn it all off, and then come back to it and go, holy crap, you got a lot going on, dude. And it makes me realize maybe maybe I need to cut a few things and not start a few new things and just, anyway.
Well, a really great man once told me, Tim Rode, that you cannot push 5 wheelbarrows up a hill. And he said, because when the hill gets the most steep, you're going to be really lucky to push one. So, you have to prioritize your life right now, and you have to write down all your obligations, which is exactly what I'm doing. And you got to cross a whole bunch of shit off the list. You got to get rid of it. You got to say no. You got to change some stuff. You have to change your life. You have to change your systems at home. You have to get organized. And I think right now having it all is having less. It is. It's less clothes. It's less stuff to deal with. It's less mess, less all of the things, and less business. And then, we have something in the expanded human called the enough number. And it's really sitting down and determining what is enough for your life. Because some of us have this idea that we have to make this much money to make it all work. And this number is going to change and grow. It's a working number. But if you sit down and you look at what do I need to have it be enough? And that's, going out or having massage or whatever, build in your ideal number and then work toward that. I have a lot of coaches in my life that really want to make $10,000 a month. And if you really look at it, a lot of us don't need to make $10,000 a month. We need to make $7,000 a month. And when you can master that and have that practice down and look at it, and you need to grow into it because you want to save or invest or do something with it, making money is incremental. You cannot just make a whole bunch of money. I sold a program this year at the beginning of the year, and I made more money than I'd ever made. And I was not prepared to make that much money. You have to be prepared incrementally to earn so that you can manage it. Otherwise, you lose it, you blow it. So it's also very incremental. So you also just have to be really realistic right now. And, if you really want to make a big purchase, stick it on the refrigerator for 30 days. And in 30 days, if you still want to make that purchase, then look at it.
Yeah.
But this is the piece that I want to make sure we hit before we go. And then I want to answer more questions is everybody wants to impact the world and everybody wants to change the world. The world does not want to be saved. The world wants to be loved. Planet is perfect when we're not messing with it. Nature flows and changes and shifts. And right now we're forcing the earth and our whole world to try and fit into this idea of what we think it should be. And the earth is not meant to mirror us. We're meant to mirror the earth. And the only way we're going to ever get any of this to shift is to get in damn alignment with ourselves and our needs and our truths and our emotions and our pieces. And when that piece happens, the earth will begin to shift. But otherwise, we're just cramming it down the floor. And I'm so tired of people that show up on stage that want to make impact, and I'm going to impact your life, and my product is going to impact you. I don't want your damn impact. I didn't ask for it. Teach me something, show me a way that you're living that's interesting and magnetically attract me to it, and I'll probably buy whatever you're selling. But if you're trying to force it down my throat and tell me that it's the way, I'd rather see you doing it. I'd rather observe and be like, wow, they have what I want. I want that. And how do I get that? How can I find that for myself? That's way more interesting. And I really think that's what needs to change on earth in our businesses, especially if you're out there promoting something. I mean, Christopher Lochhead has just been killing it with marketing and how it's changing and stuff. But, we need to come at it from a more conscious angle and have those pieces really aligned to be able to do stuff and to be overly giving and overly compassionate. That it's very scary out there. It's very scary for some people out there.
Cool. Hector?
just want to sit. I just wanted to honor that and open it up to the rest of the group. We got about 10 minutes left with Rhonda. So if there's questions, thoughts, or even sometimes you don't even know what the question is, but you just know where you're at, and some people can gain just as much from that. So even if it's you just want to throw out, hey, here's what I'm going through, what do you think? I think Rhonda's a great sounding board. So I'd love to open it up.
Yeah, check out my book. I mean, this book came through me as a Dharma thing, and I was terrified to write it because it was very different than what other people were saying. And it caused a lot of depression in my life. And I don't want to say almost took me down, but it took me out for a little bit. And this book is about our time right now. This book is about having to change the way we're going and heading up that mountain, because we all think that that's where we're going to find it. And I coach people with a lot of net worth sometimes that have empty success syndrome. So sometimes where we're headed in our goals, when we get there, it doesn't feel any different. It's not what you're looking for. That peace comes from inside of us.
Her book is available on Amazon. Oh, look, Tim beat me to it. There you go. It's in the chat there.
My book's available everywhere books are sold. Check it out.
I love it. And it's on my bookshelf as well. But it's not available for
Read
you.
it twice.
Yeah, nice.
I did. I sped read it right after the conference, and then I came home and took a deep dive into it. So it's a great book, you guys. I highly recommend it. And I love her work because she's right. Everybody's just go, 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 and you can do it. And, even at One Life, we're dream it, plan it, live it, get after it, go after your best life. But few talk about the real life challenges and the inner battle we have. And I'll be honest, like Rhonda, what were your words? I'm an entrepreneur that suffers from depression. I would say mine is more ADHD bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a interesting ride to One Life, Go Abundance, and doing all of this while you feel, ups and downs. So Rhonda, I love your work and I respect
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, I wouldn't be here without you, but for sure. But it's when you have depression or you have something that's diagnosed in some way, it's a superpower. We have access to emotional state, to intuition. We have a different access than a lot of people. We can kind of foresee things and kind of like we're really guided in a different way, but it comes with a cost. And the cost is sometimes we feel super funky, or sometimes we have to go through things. And when you can learn how to build that into the culture of your business and your life, and you have the proper support, my dad didn't really understand any of it. And when I would tell him I'm depressed, or even having feelings of suicidal tendencies, which we can, talk about in another call, but, which is normal. It's a normal thing. Lots of people have those feelings, and it's not that we want to die. It's that we don't know how to live. And it's scary. And at that point, like, it just seems easier to tap out. And he would say, but you're so young and you have so much to live for. And that wasn't seeing me. It was bypassing my feelings and telling me I should feel another way. And there's nothing greater you can say to someone when they're in that moment than, God, that must be so hard. That must be so hard to feel that way. And just listen.
I think another candid challenge is on our spouses, our teams, and those around us. We're supposed to be these great leaders that just show up and are on point and never let them see you sweat. And that ain't my brain, and I was on a call with Carol and Colleen this morning before a call I was supposed to do with her and Susan before a call with an attorney. And I was on with Casey, but I was so grumpy and so out of sorts. I canceled the next call and just went out and meditated and got quiet. And that's that self-care, because I didn't want to show up to Carolyn and Susan, the dickhead I was being, and
it's also okay to show up and be a dickhead. You know, it's also, if you just show up and say like, I'm in this state right now, do you want to have this call with me or do you want to postpone it? And let people have a choice. But when you create your companies, you have to create the culture of telling them who you are. When I sat down before Expanded Human was created and I had somebody handing me a whole bunch of money and I said, let's have a call because I want to know who you are on your worst day. I was probably the only one that really showed up to that call and being like, there are times when I will probably tap out for a couple of weeks and you guys are going to have to run the ship. But there's times when I am super in flow and I am all always like, what's next? And let's do it and let's create some magic. And like, if you want to be in business with me, this is who I am. And I don't have any shame with it. I don't have any guilt with it. Like, this is who I am, but there's magic in that. And there's also the payment of the magic.
Right. Yeah. Still, and I guess I'm still finding my way as a leader because I do want to, you know, like in GoBundance, I'm one of the leaders, and in One Life, I am the leader, and I think it's important, for them to know who you are and how, you know, like preempt you know, the different moods that we experience and stuff. But I think we owe it to them as the leader to try and check that and hold it in. And I watch somebody like Osborne, who you know, I don't ever see him different on any call. He just shows up the same way. And that's who, you know, as more up and down leaders, I think it's imperative we speak our truth, but we sometimes just shut up and don't let them know everything going on in that.
I agree with not letting them know everything, but I also think it's important that, you know, the number of people with depression right now, and it doesn't have to be clinical, it can be environmental depression or anxiety, is enormous. And I have a lot of people who are afraid to work with me because they think that they have to show up and be this like person, because if I just portray myself online as this person that's got my shit together all the time, that is completely defeating to a brand new entrepreneur. You know, when we step into having a business or we step into a new thing, there's a different level of anxiety that just kind of lives in our body. And I don't like the term new normal, and I'm not buying into that for what's happening on the planet. But for us, that is a new normal, right? Like, that is a new normal. And we have to learn how to be in that. And if I know that Tim Rode, you know, also has days where he's funky, or there's other people in GoBundance I know that do too. I'm like, okay, so I'm a normal person. Okay, so normal people can still do this. I don't have to be this freaking superhero that can show up every day to everything consistently. And I'm human. I'm not a spiritual robot. I'm not happy or positive all the time. I actually have a page, which I haven't really done much with in a couple of years, but it's called The Unhappy Life Coach, which is kind of funny, right? Because life coaches are supposed to make you happy, but it's the truth. It's like it's my dark side, right? It's that dark, edgy, pokey part of me. And that's real. And I very much embrace that in all that I do, because we can't do anything that we're meant to do here unless we're really honest with ourselves. And nothing in my life worked. And I have a really gnarly past, with suicide attempts and with depression and severe addiction tendencies. And until I like had radical acceptance with myself, and I was just like, I'm going to talk about this online, you know, and you don't have to share your laundry, you know, you don't have to give it all away. But I thought it was important because it's the thing that kind of made me free. Nothing owns me. Everybody can know who I am. I don't have anything to hide, but you get to decide in your own authenticity and your vulnerability what you're comfortable sharing. And if something's really hard, you know, I had some things that I had to say that were super hard that I don't share online. And I told some of my friends, and I'm just like, I have to tell you this because I need to heal from this. And having someone to talk to about it is important, whether you get a coach, whether you get a therapist, or you just tell your friend. You know, don't let anything own you. And if there's something in your life that is just so private and hard for you, it's time to look at it, especially where we are on the planet.
This has been wonderful. Guys, we're right about the hour mark. And so just thank everybody for being here on the call. And if you're catching this on the recording, you're with us in spirit and energy and all the things. So we want to honor you as well. Go get her book. It's called The Whole Method: Leaders, Quiet the Noise, Blaze Your Own Trail, and Unleash your Full Potential. You can find it anywhere books are sold, Amazon being one of them. And when you're there, make sure you pick up the One Life Roadmap Journal for Adults and leave a review for both of them. We love you forever. And we just want to encourage you to go out there and love yourself, because the title of this call was Love Yourself and Healing the World. And I think that collectively, if we can all do some of these things that we talked about on the call, it will make, you know, that impact that Rhonda, right? If the love, you know, will create its own impact. And I think that is a great message. So enjoy your day. Next week is right after 4th of July. It's 4th of July weekend. So those in the States, it's a holiday. So we will be taking that day off, but we'll be back with you the following week. That is July 13th. We'll be here with you as well. So thank you so much, and we'll see you guys on the next one.